I'm Brian Carpenter, host of Fresh Air at 5, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Monday, or it may be well into Tuesday, depending on where it is that you're joining us in the world. But thank you, as always, for making us part of your viewing and listening pleasure. Thank you so much for all the likes, shares, and follows. Thank you so much for subscribing to all our socials, guys. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us, and obviously for the growth of the show to be able to share it out with everybody. And as you know, we always want to bring you the best, and in having some amazing conversations about what's going on in education, in the education space, in the creator space, and even in the entrepreneur space. So thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful evening. And today I have two amazing guests that are joining us, and I will give them a little bit of time so they can introduce themselves. But tonight, I would love to welcome, for the first time on a podcast or even live, we've got Jackie Gersitano who's joining us. And I know that we have a veteran probably on the podcasting scene. I know she's done a lot. We've got Rita Ferrandino on the show. Ladies, how are you all this evening?
So excited. We're ready to talk about how districts need to communicate more and more, have more effect. So, Fonz, we are ready to talk about the power of strategic communication.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, I'm excited to be here because again, it's no coincidence. Well, maybe it was very coincidental or not, but today there was something that occurred here within our local districts, and it just falls right into what we're going to be talking about today. And one of the things for myself is definitely seen here firsthand working within a district, the things that happen, the things that we hear that happen in other school districts. And we know that having effective strategic communication can make a big difference between, just what is it, something not so grand occurring, or we don't want any kind of events like we've seen in the past. We want to make sure that everybody is safe, and we want to also make sure that all stakeholders are all connected and making sure that everything is good to go. So before we dive into the full conversation, if I can just get a little brief introduction from both of you, and we'll go ahead and start with Jackie. Jackie, if you can go ahead and give us a little brief introduction and your context within this strategic communication space and education space.
Sure. So I've been doing strategic communications through my organization, Alessi Communication and Design, which I founded in 2015. And I've worked at all levels of education with clients all up and down the East Coast and across the United States, how to communicate complex ideas to all levels of stakeholders and how to plan ahead for what communications may need to be made.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Rita, how about yourself? If you can give us a little brief introduction as well, and then, of course, your context within this same space.
Well, I am Rita Ferrandino, and I am the founder of ARC Capital Development. We're an advisory firm that works exclusively in the education market for the last 20 years. And we work with the most innovative companies that are bringing research based solutions to improve education around the world. I also serve as the innovation consultant at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education, which is the number one graduate school of education in the country, which is where I met Jackie. And as we looked at some of the biggest problems facing our school leaders today, communications and the need to modernize communications was one of the things in our research that we found most was really hamstringing leaders. So we decided to pull together our expertise to be able to offer to school leaders help on how to harness the power of strategic communication.
Excellent. Well, again, ladies, thank you so much for being here. And again, this couldn't have come at a better time as, like I mentioned to you, there was something that happened here within our local school districts. And obviously, I'm glad that nothing serious happened. It just seemed that it was just a threat. But of course, the authorities took proper precautions and so on. And of course, we're talking about strategic communication. And not only does that communication have to deal within the leaders as well, but within the community. And we'll get into that right now. But I wanted to start asking about the role of strategic communications and how that has it, or how you have seen it evolve, from district leaders during these current polarizing times. And we'll go ahead and start with Rita for this one first.
Well, first of all, visionary leaders know that investing in communications upfront can make the difference between pushing forward a vision for student success or losing precious time navigating controversy. So, in today's increasingly polarized climate, district leaders need to master strategic communication for both themselves and their district. This means proactively laying the groundwork for positive stakeholder engagement from parents to staff to the media and beyond, so that when a crisis hit, like you experienced today, the district and superintendent can lean on the supportive coalitions they've already built.
Excellent. And Jackie, how about any additional thoughts to that? And especially, like you said, in these times uh, where we have to just be ready at any given second. And, what are your thoughts?
It's all about being proactive and having a plan in place ahead of time so that you're not inventing communications on the fly. You know what the message is, you know the school's identity, and the goal and the purpose, and then you can more effectively communicate with stakeholders when there is something happening in real time instead of having to cobble together a plan.
Oh my goodness. You just said something there that kind of resonated, just like it almost like communicate as you go rather than already just having effective communication. And that really resonates because, we understand that we can practice and there could be a plan in place, but sometimes when things happen unexpectedly, sometimes we miss out, or there could be one link that just kind of misses that communication. And you can have, something, a travesty occur, which we want to always try to avoid. And so, my question to you is, what are some of those critical elements in order to have proactive communication? And how can leaders plan for that? So, we'll start with Jackie first, and then we'll go to Rita.
I think one of the first things to do for any organization, and especially in education, is to understand who the groups are that you want to speak to, because there may be no more invested stakeholders than there are in education. You have parents, you have teachers, you have people at all levels of the spectrum who are doing mission driven work to educate students. And so it's understanding who who are all the people who care about what you're doing. How can you communicate what you're doing to them ahead of time? And create a buy-in or even just an understanding across your stakeholders of what you're all about and why what you do is important to you too. So you can work beside them and not talk to them.
Ooh, I like that. Rita.
Well, based on our extensive experience in K 12, Jackie and I have designed a 4 module strategic communication program for districts, through which we can work with district leaders to develop, give voice to, and amplify their vision amongst all these stakeholders. And the 4 part um, module series that we put together was really designed because most schools are in the business of educating students. They're not professional communication organizations, and they need to be able to have the structure put in place for them on how to put all of this into place. And so let me explain just for a minute what the 4 modules are. That'll give you a better sense of the critical elements. The first module being a case for communication. This is a workshop where we establish team buy in across the district on why it's important to invest time and attention in strategic communications and crisis management. Then we move into a second module, which is really identifying the foundations. And this is laying all of the critical foundation work that you need to be able to have in place. Then the third module is really a communication audit with data analysis, where we look at a baseline of the district's communication activities, uncover the opportunities for growth, and highlight practices that need to continue and some that may discontinue. And then we move into a fourth module, which is really crisis communication preparedness. And this is where we really work with the district to be proactive on aligning the communication channels, um, understanding who's going to need to be identified as the spokesman, who is going to have um, uh, the job of the cohesive messaging in terms of a crisising, who is going to be actually communicating with staff, community, etc. This 4 module series is really what we feel to be the critical elements, circling back to the original question.
Excellent. And see what I love about that you mentioned is like it's an overarching or it really encompasses the whole, as a district. And many times it's, certain information only stays with certain people, but then, you're leaving others in the dark. And like you mentioned, that could be, a decision that, you may have some consequences there depending if there is an active event and so on. So again, I really love the way that you broke that down because it is very important that all people, all stakeholders, everybody really from the top down are well informed and even the parent community. And one of the things that I always say is we use the term learning community, but we don't include the parents. We just think it's just, the superintendents, administrators, students, teachers, and that's it. But I mean the parents and even maybe the local authorities and being able to create that cohesive team and create that communication. So now I want to ask you, and I'll start off with you, Rita, now, and then we'll move over to Jackie. But, you know, with what we've seen, within the past years, and we've seen, many things happening on the news and a lot of things that are just, wow, appalling. And many times we think like, what could have been done differently here? I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges that you see that district leaders face when communicating that overall vision, and how can they overcome that?
Um, well, I'd like to, if you will indulge me, to give you an example of a
Mhm.
school district, my home school district in Florida, that did not use strategic communications and what resulted from that. That may be an easier example to share. And so I am an engaged public school supporter. There isn't anybody actually probably in my home district in Florida that is as big a supporter as I am. But the school district does almost nothing to communicate with me, a community member, about their positions on anything. They're not communicating about their strategic vision for their schools, the progress they're making on learning achievements, the strong community alliances they've built, the successes of their career and technical programs, the highly qualified professional development they're giving their capable staff. And so my home district was an A-rated school district for almost 6 years. And I can guarantee you that my neighbors had no idea at what a good job the school district was having. And what unfolded was the district um, ran into a lot of polarizing figures that entered school board meetings and caused a lot of um, negative things to happen to the school district. And when you really boil it down, if the school district would have been proactively building relationships with their parents, with their community alliances, with their donors, with the taxpayers who are funding the school district, when it ran into trouble, there are many of us that would have come to their aid But because they didn't have anything in place like that, um, mayhem occurred, and at the end of the day, the students suffered, and um, that's really the bottom line with why strategic communication is so important. And frankly, that this Florida district, my home district, has a communication department that is, really skilled at providing scores of football games and sharing bake sale information. The communication department is probably structured like it was 20 years ago. They probably have the same people running it with the same skills. Many school districts across this country don't have communication departments at all and rely on, a parent who likes Facebook to be doing their communication, or former English teachers. And we're here today because when controversy and crisis erupts, we want our school districts to be able to communicate clearly with all the key stakeholders, partners, and the community about their position and what they're doing so that they can defend themselves and be supported.
Excellent. Jackie?
Yeah, and I think what's really important to note here, and something you said earlier, and what Rita also touched on, is that there are important stakeholders that a district may not even be keyed into. So somebody in the community who may not have a child in the district or any of the schools, but is paying taxes and is an public education proponent, will be interested and engaged in education and will care about what the school is doing. And I think something you said earlier is important to emphasize, is that staff and district internal folks, they are a stakeholder group as well. So having an understanding of who cares about what's going on in the district and making time to listen to them too. This is the first and most integral part of a communication plan. And the best way to be proactive is to spend time listening before you start communicating, so you understand really what the values are and what the concerns are about all these different groups.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And a couple of things that I want to highlight is, yes, I agree with you that many times, at least the school districts that we see often around, and maybe it's just not happen. It doesn't happen here because you described, the way that we normally see it. Sometimes it's you see the bake sales, you see the things that are happening, but what about that vision? Selling it to the community. Essentially, it's a marketing. We have to sell our district. We want to make sure that we bring up the values that we have. We show what we stand for. We show our grades, not just the football scores or the trophies, because anybody can get those trophies. I mean, there is work that goes into it, but I mean, the overall feeling of what this district is going to offer. And I'm going to add something to this that, many people may know, because here in our local area, we've got, of course, our district, and we've got other districts around here. But there are some specific districts that we lose students to after sixth grade because they offer programs that we don't have here within our local school district. So then those students end up going elsewhere. And so I think that, like you mentioned, Jackie, one of the important things is are we listening to parents as far as what it is that we're needing to have here to keep those students here? If they're willing to be here from pre-K all the way to six, why can't we keep them? What is it that we're missing? And it could just very well be that obviously that communication piece, but also in sharing like our mission, our vision, our tradition of excellence, and not just, hey, here's football, we got district champs, or hey, we're area one in band. Those are all great, but the
Yeah.
overall, like, what is your child going to get from here, which would be that tradition of excellence. And
It's
the
a
yeah, go ahead, Rita.
it's a
Oh,
mindset
Jackie.
shift.
Yes.
It's from thinking of communications as something you have to do to something that is a tool. It's an asset for an organization like a school, like a higher ed institution. It's an asset to be able to say, because all of the work that you're doing in a district or within a school, it's not visible unless you're communicating it. So it's really, in a lot of ways, you're impacting students' lives and teachers' lives But it's not visible beyond that if you're not actually telling people about what's going on. And that's where, um, the opportunities for stories within a school are enormous. There are lives changing every day. And if we don't communicate that, then if you're not directly involved with a school or with a student, then you wouldn't know.
So that we talked about the four modules, and this is module two, which is after the first module where you get everybody in the district, understanding why communications is so important and critical to the success of your district. Module two is really doing this identity work that you're talking about, which is who are you? What are you special at? What is it and why is it that you're doing that's competitive? What's your competitive advantage? That's that whole identity foundation. And then you look at your communication audit, which is who are you communicating to and how effectively are you doing it? The days of, thinking you can send one blanket email to all the stakeholders and think that they're going to receive that information is just, not accurate. There are people who only look at YouTube. There are people who only are on Instagram. There are people who only look at text messages. And so you have to have a robust communication plan to be able to really effectively get your message out.
Mhm. And I absolutely agree with you on that. See, one of the things that you mentioned that I love is we're kind of very stuck in our old ways. There was a guest of mine that I had on, Amy Mayer, and to me, it's the first time I heard the phrase. It's like we're stuck in the twatty, the this is the way we've always done it kind of box. So now, like you mentioned, there are so many venues as far as social media, and you're absolutely right. Not everybody looks at emails, and some people are more, on social media. That's a quicker response. And then, sometimes it just feels like school districts are relying on those past year school teachers that are retired to just share on Facebook so everybody else can see. And meanwhile, everything has happened and you're trying to keep up, but you can't because you never really got the news because you don't have that proper communication. So I want to ask now about that communication audit. What is it that we should be looking for within our district to make sure that we get that communication to our parent, to any stakeholder at a given time? And if there are some roadblocks, how do we overcome those? So we'll start with Jackie first.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be able to get a lay of the land. So that's the audit part, right? What are we doing currently and how is it working? And I think it's such a simple question that we may skip over it in our day-to-day activities. Well, I'm doing this because we always do this. But how is it working? Are parents receiving that? Are they responding to it? Are they engaged with the way that you're communicating with them now? And if the answer is anything less than yes, 100%, then there's room for improvement. And that's where the listening comes in. And so I think this is, being able to pull together the data that you do have on the various channels that you use, whether that's Facebook or email or mailers or events. And it's being able to look at it under an expert lens and say, did that work? Did it not? Why not? And then those are the building blocks for putting together an actual proactive communication strategy. And they're not going to be the same for everybody. That's the other key. And that's why stakeholder engagement is so important and listening is so important because it's going to depend on your community, your parents, your teachers, your students, what's actually going to work. And that's why communications isn't like a one size fits all. That's why we can't just give everybody a handbook and say, this is how you do it, because it's a people business. This is all about the people that we actually want to talk to.
Excellent. Rita?
I was just going to use the example of my business partner. He reads his email once a week, and during COVID, he read his email once a week. So thinking that you're going to ever be able to reach him during any part of the week, that just isn't going to happen, right? So we all have our preferred ways of communicating. If you want to be able to reach me, I almost answer immediately to email and to LinkedIn. I'm never on Twitter and I'm never on Instagram. So it's this audit piece that really allows you to figure out who your stakeholders are and who and how they want to be communicated to, and then how you're going to get your message delivered down each of those different channels.
Excellent. Now, let me ask, just because, at least from my experience, oftentimes there may be a feeling, and not necessarily from on the parent side, but I think that many times from the administrative standpoint, they may feel like, well, that's just too much or too many venues to reach out to. So, my question is there such a thing as too many, or do we really have to I mean, should we really be taking in all that stakeholder information and really just say, you know what, it may seem like too much, but this is the way they're getting it, so let's just go ahead and do it. And so what are your thoughts on that? We'll start with Rita.
I'm going to start with public schools are funded by federal, state, and local tax dollars. School districts have got to wake up and understand that they're actually government agencies that are accountable to the public. So this big movement for parental rights and big movement for transparency is largely just built out of the fact that they are actually public entities, right? So I think, first of all, public schools have got to get better at this because they're responsible to the people who are paying for their budgets. So on a very straight uh, communicate, that is why you have to communicate more broadly than just parent, right? If you want me to pay my tax dollars, and you got to communicate with me and tell me one.
Thanks.
So now I'm on a soapbox and I forgot the rest of your question.
No, well, the question was, is there such a thing as too much, as far as too many venues, as far
Mhm.
as sharing information? Uh, what would you say, or what would you think about maybe if a school district says, hey, this is what we are standardizing on, but of course informing all parents? Sometimes I feel that, many parents may say, hey, well, I mean, this isn't what I use. Why
Right.
am I going to download an additional app that I don't need, or anything of that sort? What are your thoughts on that?
So I want to just, if you don't mind, Jackie. So I'm going
Yeah.
to go back to, you keep talking about communications with parents, right? And I keep saying, no, actually, parents are only one stakeholder, right? There are donors that make donations to your school and support you. They have to be communicated with. The community who funds your taxes has to be communicated with. You have got to be thinking about this. We all have to be thinking about communications much broader than just students, parents, teachers, right?
Excellent.
And
Jackie? Oh,
even the district staff
Yeah.
have communication plans.
I would say I'll bring it back to your question. I would say that when we're thinking about channels, because that's what you're getting at, is
yes.
all of the channels that we
Mm.
use to communicate. When we're thinking about each one, the question is why? Why are we using it? And if there is a good answer for why we're using it, then it's not too many. And that goes back to the audit and to understanding stakeholders. Um, it would be too many if you're hitting every stakeholder multiple times. If you've got a strategy that's based on what has worked, what hasn't worked, that's based on data, then you can say in advance, we're going to reach parents these two ways. We're going to reach staff this way. We're going to communicate to the community in these three ways, just as an example. And once you have that strategy, then it's not so much to manage, because then you know that what you're using is actually effective. So you're not spending extra time trying to put out fires or trying to reinvent the wheel, because you've made these very concerted decisions about which channels to use. And so again, with what I said before, it's no one size fits all. So the answer could be yes, it's too many channels. Are you doing TikTok for the sake of being on TikTok? Well, then yeah, that might not be a data informed strategy, and then maybe it's using too much of your time. But you don't know until you look at your stakeholders and your data.
Excellent. Well, actually, I loved both answers. So, Rita, like, kudos to you because, yes, I was only, and again, I guess it's just that my mentality there. And again, it's because that's what I've only seen. But now that you mentioned, it's like, you're absolutely right. There's other, aside from parents, you've got your community stakeholders, which is huge. And then, of course, you've got the donors, you've got people. And I've never thought about it. And to be honest with you, many times, if I haven't thought about it, then I don't know. I hope that the rest of my district and the people, the leaders that are there are communicating those things. And it's not just, hey, we're having a game or hey, we're having a bake sale. Like we're really selling the story too as well. So yes to both answers. I loved it. It just really came together really well. All right. So my next question, and this time I'll start with Jackie. Now, of course, and what I want to do is I'm just going a little bit deeper into the modules because I feel that this is very important and I don't want to leave any stone unturned. So, the fourth module, what we're talking about is the crisis communication and preparedness. We understand, like I mentioned today, we had an incident today. There's some incidents where, of course, because due to COVID and other things that may happen, what do you see are some of maybe the obstacles or maybe just maybe I don't want to say maybe just bad practice. I don't know. What could we refine and do better so we can, really communicate to everybody during those times? And what exactly do we want to communicate?
I think the most important thing, and I know that I'm sounding repetitive here, is understanding ahead of time who needs to hear what and in what order. And if you have a plan in place, then you're not being reactive in a crisis. You know what your plan is, and then you can start to execute it. And it takes out that uncertainty and that question and the time that you lose trying to figure out, okay, who do I need to talk to and how do I need to tell them and what's the best way to reach them and who even from the district should be sending this message. And that's the importance. And that's the key of crisis communication is you hope that all the work you do in crisis communication, you won't ever have to use. And that's the plan. Be as prepared as possible. And so it's not going to be a scramble when you need it.
Excellent. Rita?
Well, we every school in this country does fire drills and active shooter drills today, right? And what we need to do is we need to proactively have all those same protocols in place for the communication plan that needs to happen. And it's as simple as dedicating time to proactively think through all of the likely scenarios that can happen. So a bomb threat is one of those that we should have the game plan already in place. We've got the talking points ready. We know who is going to communicate to whom when. We know in what order, as Jackie said. So I only thing I'd like to add to Jackie's is that we also need the proactive piece where we block it all out in advance so we can pull it out and instantly be ready.
And I think the limiting factor in that, going back to your question, is probably time, right? District staff, school staff, teachers, everybody is just trying to find more time to do all of these things. But I would say that communications is the kind of work that if you invest in it up front, you invest the time to lay this groundwork, then it actually takes less time on the back end because you've already created a system that works. And I think that goes back to module 1 is creating the buy-in for it. This is how communication can serve you. It is not an extra thing that you have to do. It is a tool. It is an asset. It will help make your jobs easier if it's thought about in a very intentional way up front.
It's really having the communication tools and the protocols, the procedures, the checklists on how you're going to handle the crisis. Who is going to be the spokesperson? Who will create the talking points? Who's going to deploy the talking points? Who's going to handle the media? who calls the legal team in, who is responsible for executing all of the procedures and protocols. If you've got get all that foundation in place, it makes for a much greater success when crisis hits.
Excellent. Yeah, and those are all great and valid points. And like I said, I know locally, I mean, what happened after Uvalde, at least here in our area, I know that we all came up with codes, and this is something that I want to share. You know, that you had codes like, this color meant this color meant that. Now, I was talking to a colleague of mine. I said, okay, this is the way that we standardized here in our district. But then the district, let's say next door, and we're kind of a district within a district, so we're surrounded by other schools, so they defined their colors a little bit different. So then my question was, is like, hey, imagine that this surrounding area was under a threat. And what if this police department from Mission is going to go assist in McAllen and they're saying, hey, code orange, but Mission's orange is a different kind of thing than what they're doing in the neighboring district. So I feel like you're like what you're saying is that communication piece really needs to extend out, not even just like you said, to all stakeholders and municipalities and say, hey, why can't we standardize for everybody what the colors mean? Because what if you do need that additional support and then somebody says, "Hey, we're in code yellow, where yellow means, over there something that is grave danger. Over here, yellow's like, everything's fine, just go on in." And then, travesty happens or something. So yeah, I absolutely now you're allowing me and helping me see things in a much more broad spectrum and how important this really is. And honestly, I really think that we're not doing our due diligence in having these conversations at this level because it just seems many times that everything is just compliance. We're just going to check the box. We did the training, check the box, and it's like the 12 videos that you need to see at the beginning of the year for, every year and just to check the box. But are we putting these into practice? What else is going on? And are we, going through this with every district? And that way there's that communication too, So wow, this is amazing. All right. So now let's talk a little bit more of those just I guess strategies. And actually no, we've already hit on a lot of those things. So I kind of want to ask now, how can district leaders really give voice to and amplify that mission? And maybe we can just, go from the top down that message. How do we get it across or what can we do better than we are doing now? So we'll start with Rita.
Well, I'm going to just give you an example of one of the best examples of coalition building I've seen. Is the Reading Area School District in Pennsylvania. It's the fifth largest district in Pennsylvania. It's a very high free and reduced lunch district, and they had a new superintendent that came in, Dr. Moomin, and his job was to really turn around the district. And he put into place. He was a visionary leader that he wanted to use social media and YouTube in particular as his key communication tool to build his coalition uh, his coalition strategy. And what he did was engaged in getting students to create videos, and he worked with the students to actually make viral sensations. And I don't know how many of you have seen Kid Superintendent on YouTube, but I'll put the link into um, the chat for everybody. But this video was during COVID and it was awesome. They got a whole kid production group together to tell the students in the district about um, how to handle COVID. And it was a viral sensation. And he built his social media outreach to over 5.25 thousand active subscribers. And so he then started to, whenever he had any job openings, to do videos. He did pop ins to his school districts, to the lunch aides, and thanked them. And he very proactively used YouTube as his glue. And he went on to be superintendent of the year in Pennsylvania. And now he was just given the prestigious title of deputy of education for the state of Pennsylvania, all because he understood how to use communication to drive um, to dr- to drive support.
And trust. And I think those are two examples of this is good communication across the board, even beyond education. You're leading with something that's valuable. It's not an advertisement, it's adding value. What to do about COVID, for example, his first viral. And then a video to thank the staff and the teachers. That's proactive, right? He's building relationships, he's building trust. And that's the big difference between communicating to people in the middle of a crisis when they maybe haven't built any relationship with the school or the district staff up to that point. So everybody's panicked. Nobody trusts somebody that they don't know.
So one of the other things he did was he videotaped every school activity and sporting event. So my 87-year-old parents, who both went to the Reading School District, they love sports. And before you know it, there they are watching all of the sporting events because it came to them free of charge. All they had to do was hit the link. And so there they were rooting for, the women's basketball team.
That is
Community.
wonderful. And that's so important. One of the things that you mentioned that I love is really using the students. They're a valuable resource. And then you can get buy-in from students, you get the buy-in from the parents, you get the buy-in from the community, and maybe even just reaching out to the community to do these sorts of events and recordings and so on. And really, that's the way that you build those relationships. And that's so important. And then with the communication piece and the vision, I mean, you're definitely going to be getting that buy-in. So I absolutely love those strategies. And again, like just from myself and just in my experience and what I've seen today has really opened up my eyes that there is a much more broader conversation that needs to take place rather than just from superintendent down to student or just parent. It needs to go further than just the parent to every stakeholder that even has anything to do with the school district or even just that municipality. Because at the end, you're telling your story to them. They're part of your community. You want their support and don't just reach out to them just when you need the support, but you really involve them in that. And then I think that everything else that we talked about, obviously to the incident preparedness and things of that sort, will also they'll be buying into that once you're sharing that communication, what the overall goal is for everybody from the top down and all the way horizontally as well into the community. So this was just really an eye-opening conversation. So I'm
Right.
really thankful. Thank you so much, Jackie, Rita. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you all shared and being here this evening. So I'm really excited to cut this episode and then really start getting all those little sound bites because there's such amazing sound bites that are here this evening. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But before we go, I always and again we're going to take turns here. Before we go, I always end the podcast with the following three questions. So today, well, there's two of you. So, of course, you're each going to get the same question. So, let's go ahead and get started. So, question number one. We all know that Superman's greatest weakness was kryptonite. As soon as kryptonite came close to him, it just kind of weakened him and just, he lost some of his strength. So I'm going to start with you, Jackie. How, in the current state of, and I guess we'll keep it to this, in the current state of strategic communication, what would you say is your current kryptonite?
So I'm thinking of this as something that makes it hard for me, not something that I'm like putty in its hands. Yeah, so I think that it's the politicization of education across the board. I think that it's as a communicator, it's very difficult. I mean, we don't have to tell districts twice. That makes everybody's job harder. But I also think just on a very basic level, it doesn't need to happen because we're all in it. for the same reason. And I think that there can be less polarization on education at the very least.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great answer. Rita?
So thank you, Fonz, for giving this important topic an airing because the biggest challenge we have is the districts understand that there are a lot of challenges, but they don't know where to go to be able to get the resources to be able to put strategic communications in place. So I would say that Jackie and I have the ability to help. And it's not all that difficult to get this foundation laid. And we really want to help school districts to be able to be prepared so that they can thrive and they can spend their time educating our students, and we should help them take this off their plates, put it into processes and procedures and protocols so it's all there so they can get back to the business at hand.
Excellent.
Rita doesn't have a
Perfect.
kryptonite because she can manage anything.
Yeah, I was like, Rita. So Rita doesn't have a kryptonite. She has
Yeah.
no weakness. That's wonderful. No, but actually, no, actually, in that answer that you gave, it's actually, it's perfect, because you definitely want to know, and we want everybody to know who it is that they can reach out to. That way, that's not our kryptonite, our weakness being our strategic communication. So we definitely need to do that for sure. All right. So Rita, I'm gonna let that one pass, Rita. That was a good answer because I
Oh,
know you don't have a weakness, but we're gonna start with you this time, Rita. All right.
thanks.
If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
What would the billboard say?
Yep.
Um, it would talk about the value of public education and
Perfect.
and why it's critical to our nation's thriving,
Okay.
which
Perfect.
needs
Love.
everything.
All right. Now, Jackie, what would your billboard have on it and why?
I mean, it's hard to narrow it down just to one thing because I feel like I have a lot to say to everybody. But I think pertaining to this conversation, if I could put one thing on a billboard, it would be communications as a tool. It's not a must have. It is a tool. It is an asset.
Good.
Love it. That's great.
Well, it's better
Communications
than mine.
asset. Oh, they're both great, Rita. They're both great. All right. Last question. And this time we're going to start with Jackie and then we'll end with Rita. So, Jackie, if you could turn one of your hobbies or favorite activities outside of work, not related to work, but a favorite hobby or activity into a full time profession, what would it be?
I think I'm going to say cycling.
There you go.
I would
Perfect.
love. I'm the least athletic professional athlete wannabe.
I love that. Oh, the least athletic professional athlete. Oh, I love it. That's wonderful. Well, definitely, Jackie. That'd be great. Hopefully, one day, maybe you'll win a race, and that'll be great. So wonderful. All right, Rita. How about yourself? I want to get a straight answer from you. If you can
Dance,
turn
dance,
one of
dance.
your hobbies, it would be dancing.
Yes.
There
And
you
I
go.
I have a passion for movement and education. I believe in experiential learning, and I think we need to find more ways to get students moving. Thinking that they need to, get up and go sit at a desk for all that time during a school day, I think is too limiting. So I would say dance, dance, dance.
Perfect. I love it. Well, Jack. Hey, Rita, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge, especially on a topic that is so much needed. And we definitely need to have these conversations and extend furthermore than just, like I mentioned, superintendent down to parent. I mean, it really needs to get out there. It's communication piece for your, community altogether there. So thank you so much for opening up my eyes. And I know that that's not only going to happen for me, but also for, for our audience members who are going to be watching or catching this on the replay. They will definitely get some great gems from this. And hopefully they will be sharing it out to their school districts or to some of the higher ups. And of course, all the Rita's and Jackie's information will be in the show notes. So you know where it is that you can reach out to So, or yeah, where it is that you can reach out to so you can get in contact with either Jackie or Rita if you need to have these conversations in your space, in your district. All right. Hey guys. So thank you so much again, ladies. And again, to our audience members, as always, thank you so much, as always, for making my EdTech life a part of your day. Thank you so much for all the likes, shares, and follows. So please, guys, visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 225 wonderful episodes with educators, creators, education practitioners, entrepreneurs, founders. We've got a little bit of everything, so you can go in there, pull some knowledge nuggets from, sprinkle them onto what you are already doing great. And also, if you would love to contribute to our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time, please stop by our merch store that's located there on our website too as well. You can pick yourself up a sweater, a cap. We've got all sorts of gear there for you to just even lounge around in on a Sunday afternoon, having some tea or coffee, whatever it is that you like. And all of that goes back into our show so we can bring you some amazing conversations and amazing guests to, again, help sharpen our skills, help sharpen ourselves, and think things differently. So again, thank you so much, as always, for all of your support. And my friends, as always, don't forget, until next time, stay techie.